President Biden announced the U.S. will reach his goal of 100 million shots in his first 100 days today, 58 days into his administration. Biden says he will announce another goal for vaccinations this afternoon when he visits the CDC in Atlanta. Joining me now to discuss that and some opportunities in the healthcare space is Chris Meekins, healthcare policy analyst at Raymond James. Chris, good to see you as always. Would like to get your thoughts on what Biden announced today, because the U.S. was already vaccinating roughly 1 million Americans a day under former President Trump. So what do you make of Biden being able to reach his goals about 6 weeks in advance?
I think I always lived by the motto, no expectations, no disappointments. And I think what he did was he set pretty low expectations with a goal of trying to rebuild trust and rebuild trust in his administration. I think anyone looking at it on his inauguration day would have said, of course, we're going to hit 1 million a day, unless there's a huge failure on their part or a production issue. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't celebrate the fact that we've had more than 100 million shots put in people's arms. And when you look at the people that are getting this vaccine, it's those most vulnerable, which is why hospitalizations are down, deaths are down meaningfully. So let's celebrate it, but let's not accept that this was a gargantuan moonshot challenge. This was largely staying the course on the path we were on the day he was sworn in.
Well, certainly the administration is out there touting the fact that he was able to reach this goal much earlier than expected. President Biden's going to be at the CDC touring the facility today in Atlanta. Any expectation for what it is he might announce there, that the next rollout of vaccination plans?
Yeah, I think what he's going to say is we'll hit 200 million doses in his first 100 days, which if we're doing 2.5 million a day, which is basically where we are now, that shouldn't be hard to do over the next 42 days. But really, we should be at a point where we're doing 3, 4, 5 million shots a day in the next couple weeks if we see the ramp up in availability of vaccine that we were expecting. If J&J can actually get enough vaccine to the U.S. government so we can start continuing that process, that would be a really big step forward.
You know, this week the Senate narrowly confirmed Xavier Becerra as head of Health and Human Services. He was nominated, or rather received that confirmation along party lines. It was a narrow vote. I know that when he was in Congress, he co-sponsored a number of bills that backed Medicare for all, and he's already said that his mission is to build upon the Affordable Care Act. So what do you think we can expect to come from Becerra?
It was a really unconventional pick. He was former California Attorney General. He had been a congressman who served on a health subcommittee, but really has no public health or medical background. So it was unconventional in the midst of a pandemic. With that being said, I think what we can expect is policy driven by the White House on a lot of these areas. He made it very clear during his confirmation that it was not about what his previous views were on Medicare for all, but instead what the president wanted to do, which was build on the Affordable Care Act. There are 3 areas, I think, where he might have a greater impact than some others. One being Medicare Advantage. I think he is going to try to target Medicare Advantage for rate cuts and risk audits, which may be problematic for some of those names. I think the 340B, which is a technical drug discount program that the pharmaceutical industry believes hospitals are abusing, will be an area of expansion. And then finally, on antitrust, we hear a lot about tech antitrust, but the reality is you have an HHS secretary that successfully sued a local system for $500 million settlement. And you had the FTC this week come out and say that they plan to be more aggressive on pharmaceutical mergers going forward. So I think antitrust is an area that's kind of quietly behind the scenes. It's going to get a lot louder in the weeks and months ahead.
Okay, so if it's going to get a lot louder, how might investors approach that and make some changes to the portfolio, if at all?
Yeah, I think when we look at the merger space, you want to be careful anyone who's involved in them. So when I look at names like Cigna, which have a great commercial opportunity policy-wise, they've just extended COBRA coverage for 100% federal match through the end of September. So you're going to have a lot of people still on these commercial plans, which is a net positive going forward. And they're kind of out of the merger space and merger arguments, which my colleague John Ransom has a strong buy on. Additionally, when we look at other areas, like maybe in the pharmaceutical space, something like generics, which have been beaten down, my colleague Elliot Wilbur, one of his top picks right now is Teva Pharmaceuticals, which should have the pandemic issues behind them moving forward. So I think there are opportunities, but it's really important to pay attention to what's happening in DC on healthcare policy, because there's a lot of little things going on, from antitrust to expanding access to the Affordable Care Act to potential drug pricing legislation to other issues on 340B. There's just a wide range of little things you just got to watch right now. So it's a pretty choppy waters for the next few months.
We had, I don't know if you were able to hear while you were waiting to come on with us, we had Ava Ados on of ER Shares, and she was talking about biotechs and how there's still quite a long runway for them. I know biotechs is this big, huge umbrella, but where do you think that fits into somebody's healthcare exposure going forward?
Yeah, I think it's great opportunities for growth. I think we've seen what American ingenuity and pharmaceutical ingenuity can provide us with regard to how quickly we've gotten therapeutics and vaccines to market. And it's incredibly encouraging. I think the real question is going to become what's going to happen with those potential mergers. If you have heightened review of mergers, maybe the valuations aren't quite as high as they could have otherwise been. I also think as we have a debate about drug pricing, people are going to get nervous what prices you can have for some of these specific drugs, specifically in the rare disease space. But at the end of the day, I think it's unlikely Congress is going to do anything that really fundamentally changes the pharmaceutical industry or the biotech industry in the United States. And that's a net positive. You just have to accept the fact that in biotech, it tends to be a little volatile from time to time. So if you've got a longer term horizon, it's a great place to be going forward.
All right, Chris Meekins of Raymond James, always good to see you. Enjoy your weekend.